Hey folks, little something different this week. What would Michael do by request? A couple of my subscribers have asked me to share some of my knife skills and tips. So I'm going to be happy to do that. And if you'd like to see them, stick around. Now there are hundreds of fancy things one can do with a knife, but what I'm going to show you today are the simple everyday techniques that help us do what we need to, mostly slicing and dicing, and how to do them efficiently, safely, and quickly. And if you like what you see and you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please consider that. Hit that little subscribe button right down there. And if you ring the little bell, then you'll get a notification every once in a while when there's a new What Would Michael Do, usually once a week. Also, since I'm doing by request, if you have any special requests of something that I can show you or teach you or help you figure out, please put it in the comments below and I'll do my best to get that done. Let's get started. The knives that get the most use in my kitchen are a classic chef knife, which everyone should have, a good solid handle, and a good 8 to 9 or 10-inch blade. The paring knife, which of course we all use for smaller jobs. And my favorite is the Santoku knife. I've got two versions of this. I use these for almost everything, and I'll show you why in a second. I don't spend a lot of money on knives. I know a really good knife can cost up to $100, but I don't have that these days to spend. I just go to a regular, like a Home Goods. Keep them sharp and you're in business. I even have a travel Santoku. Remember when we used to travel? Well, yep, there was always a knife in my box. Make sure you have either a stone or a steel rod or one of these trusty little devices to keep your blades sharpened. A most important feature for any knife is to be sharp. You'll avoid a lot of accidents that way. I sharpen my knife at least once every 2 weeks. Okay, let's talk about the Santoku knife. The reason why I love this Japanese invention is because the tip of the knife never has to leave the board. You can actually hold it in place while you're doing your chopping. It makes it so much easier and so much safer. The three techniques I use most are the glide, which you will see me use in a minute, the regular saw, depending on how dense whatever you're cutting is, or simply a quick chop, which is used for most herbs and things like that. Here's the most important thing to learn. If you're not doing this already, please start doing it. Claw your hand and use your knuckle as your guide when you're cutting. It's the only way to ensure that you can never cut the tips of your finger, which we don't want to do. Finally, a fancier knife may have two little notches here where the blade meets the handle. That's intended for you to actually use that to secure your knife. That way you're holding more of the blade and less of the handle. This knife doesn't really have that feature, and I'm very comfortable using the handle, but that can help you just be more secure in your chopping. Let's start chopping. I'm going to start with the three most popular things most of us chop in the kitchen: onions, celery, and carrots. It's also called the Holy Trinity because we use it in almost every soup base, most gravies and sauces. In the French call it the mirepoix. Let's start with a mirepoix. The onion. I don't think a day goes by that I don't chop an onion. I don't bake a cake without chopping an onion first. The first thing we want to do is get rid of all of that papery layer, which usually comes right off if you rub it. I use yellow or Vidalia onions mostly for cooking. I use red onion sliced very thin for salads. I don't really use white onion very much, just a personal preference. Let's chop it. Your onion is going to have a root and a stem. You'll keep the root intact if you want to dice and hold something firm so that the onion doesn't fall apart when you're cooking it. The stem can easily be pulled away. So we cut that away and pull it back. Just slit it on one side and slit it on the far side. And then you peel away that outer layer. I'm going to peel away just the half from the stem so that we can talk about the different ways we can cut our onion. I make a lot of caramelized onion, and to do that, you want to cut with the grain of the onion. Just slice it down. You see I'm using my knuckle, and I'm also using the sliding technique. If you want this for a soup or a sauce or a gravy, you keep your stem intact to hold it together. You can make 2 slits midway through, not all the way. And then we're going to turn the onion and do cuts lengthwise, using your knuckles as your guide. And then we'll claw the top, and you'll find a very simple dice comes out of that. It's always a good idea to use the back of the knife to scrape your board. It'll help keep the knife sharp. Carrots we can do 2 ways. Carrot, if you don't want to peel your carrot and you want a pretty little cube, the best way to do that, again, using your knuckles, is to shave the end of the carrot. With anything round, it's important to start with a flat surface so it doesn't roll around. Once you have one flat surface, go ahead and square the rest of it. Turn and cut. And one more time, and square it off. If you're making a stock, that stuff is great for the stock. Trim your tip, trim your foot. There's some skin left behind. You can simply peel that back. Now you've got a perfect square. If I want to dice, I'm going to cut that square in half. Again, based on how small you want it. Turn it over, one more square, cut right down the center. Even it up and match that dimension for a perfectly diced carrot. While these are beautiful, they do waste a little bit of the carrot. So if you want to utilize every inch of it, go ahead and give your carrot a peel. I always cut the thin side first, so when I flip it, I can hold the fat side. Cut off your tip. Cut off your head. I find with the carrot, it's easier to cut it down the center first, and then I'll have a little bit more flexibility in how I want to do it. This is a little bold because it does roll around, but if you feel safe doing it, claw the hand and use that guide to cut it right in half. Turn it over on its side, in half again, and now we've got 4/4 of 1/2 of the carrot. And now we can use the glide method to slice very thin for our soup, salad, or sauce. For celery, once you have rinsed your celery, I always clean and freshen up the tips. So all of that white stuff down there, about 1.5 to 2 inches, just give it a trim, and then the far side as well, just to clean up your fresh edges. With a thick piece of celery like this, turn it on its flat side so it doesn't roll around, and slice it right down the center. We'll do that again because we want a nice small cut to our diced celery. And if you still have a thick edge like that, you can slice it down halfway so that all of the pieces match when your dice begins. Level them off and glide, glide, glide. I'm not even using my knuckles for this one. I'm just working my way down the celery. And there you are, the mirepoix is ready to go. Here's a little tip for a quick chicken soup. After you have boned your chicken, your cooked roasted chicken, save the carcass with whatever meat is left on it, throw it in a pot, cover it with water, and throw in your mirepoix, your chopped celery, onions, and carrot. Add a little garlic cloves, some peppercorns, some salt, and some parsley. And an hour and a half later, you've got a fantastic soup. Let's talk about dicing some sweet potato. You're going to start by cutting off your tips and then shaving off the sides. This eliminates having to peel the potato. Then you've got a nice flat side to work with. Peel that side. And number 3 and number 4. I like to take a peeler and just clean those edges up. The smaller you cut your cubes, the quicker your potato will bake or roast in the oven. So I like about a 1/2 inch cube. This is about 2 inches thick. So I'm going to make 3 even cuts across the top. They're going to measure about a 1/2 inch each. You can check it if you like. Then you flip it on its side. You make the same 4 cuts, one down the center. and then split each of those squares in half. And now you cut these 1/2 inch long. And there are your perfectly cubed 1/2 inch sweet potato. I use lots of fresh parsley and cilantro in my kitchen, and it's the easiest thing to chop. In fact, parsley keeps better if you clean it and chop it and just keep it in a refrigerated, in a little plastic container with some paper towel underneath it. Don't cover it. It'll last so much longer and better that way, and it'll be ready when you want to use it. First thing you want to do is clean and wash. I just basically dump this in water and lay it out on paper towel or a towel cloth or a tea cloth to dry out. And then once it's dry, you want to just take your knife and run it along the edge of the parsley or cilantro until you get as much of the leaf off. Take out the big stems and then chop. Once you've cleaned away all of your stems, you're going to take your parsley and or cilantro, whichever it is, and try to clump it together as much into like a little ball as you can. Just going to fold it in on itself. Hold it like that and just chop right down. You see this little sliding motion as we go. Gather it up, push it all together. I would turn it the other way and breeze through it one more time. If you were a fan of my roasted ratatouille recipe, and frankly, I can't imagine anyone wouldn't be because it's delicious, you know that there is eggplant, zucchini, and red pepper in it. So I'm gonna chop those 3 things because I'm making that ratatouille tonight. The eggplant couldn't be easier. We're just gonna take off the crown, take off the tip. So we have a nice flat surface. You always want a flat surface. Cut it in half. This is a chunky recipe, so it's really easy to chop for. We're going to slice it without skinning it right down the center. Think about 1-inch cubes. Turn it on its side. I cut a quarter in half. Turn it on its side. Cut it in half again. Turn it on its side and cut those down for that perfect cube using the glide technique. For the pepper, we want to clean out those guts. In order to do that, the best way is to take a paring knife and just work it around the top of the pepper, about 1/2 inch from the stem. That will loosen up the guts on the inside and you can peel that right out. More often than not, the whole inside comes out with it. If it doesn't, we're going to cut this down in half on both sides. Open it up, take your paring knife, and just go right to the pith, right to the white, and slice it around. One tap, and all the extra seeds come out. I want the ratatouille sizes to be uniform, so I'm going to use the square of the eggplant as my guide. I'm going to cut this down in strips, about the same width as the eggplant is. Easy, easy, easy. And then turn it on its side and mirror that dimension. Zucchini could not be easier to cut. We're going to take off our tips. And again, if you feel daunted by the length, you could always cut it in half and attack it that way. Cut it down the center. One slice on the right, one slice on the left, sideway cut. And there is our cube to match the rest of the ratatouille recipe. You never have to take the skin off of a zucchini. That's where all your nutrients and vitamins are, and it basically holds it together because zucchini is a very high water content vegetable. I need some minced garlic for this recipe I'm making. So normally what I would do is use my planer, which I absolutely love for garlic. Once I peel it, I just rub, and in 2 seconds, I've got the finest garlic you could possibly imagine. Now, it does make the garlic kind of disappear and gets right to the meat of the garlic. So if you want it to disappear, that's a great way to do it. Otherwise, I'm gonna just snap these, pop off the skins, and we'll do a quick chop. Give it a little twist, and that skin will peel right off and get you to the meat of the garlic. Once you've got your garlic peeled, if you want to cut it into smaller pieces before you go ahead and chop it, go for it. This doesn't have to be pretty. So basically, I'm just going to use my chopping motion and cut through all the garlic at the same time. Turn it the other way. This is the technique I was talking about at the very beginning. Hold down your tip and just run it through your garlic. Clean your blade, bring it together, repeat. Now, just for giggles, I want to show you how easy this is. Take your grater, or planer, as they call it in the carpenter world. Take your garlic clove and just rub it along. It's super, super fine, almost turns to liquid. I want a little bit more body in this garlic. A rough chop is just that, perfect for a Caesar salad. Rough chop. Wow, did you make it to the end? Well, I'm impressed. Thanks so much for watching. Sharpen your knives. Get chopping.